Essentials of Health Information Management, Principles and Practices, 2nd edition, Chapter 8, Indexes, Registers, and Health Data Collection. So indexes or index serves to guide or point out or otherwise facilitate reference when we're looking in terms of a healthcare facility. And if you think about it, when you think about different types of indexes that you may come across, say the index in a textbook, you look at your index to help you or refer you or guide you to a certain page number for a particular topic that you may be interested in. Likewise with an index in a healthcare facility or healthcare environment. It does the same thing, point out or guide. Your master patient index is your major index or one of your more common indexes that you're going to see in a healthcare facility, and being that it is an index, it does just that. It helps to locate a patient's record or a patient's information when the healthcare facility is using a medical record number. So it helps to locate that number that is what is representing that patient information, right? So that's it works as we indicated that an index, as we have defined an index. You also have with your master patient index, you'll hear it called what we call MPI, and that you're either hear it called a master patient index or a master person index. All right, and so again, it's going to link that record number with that patient's information, right? And that's what we define an index as. Being that it does that, if a facility is using a alphabetical filing system, then they will not have a need for a master patient index, because that's what that does. It locates those numbers in a paper-based record environment as well as an automated environment. All right? But if an alphabetical system is being used, they don't need to use an MPI with that. Also, in terms of a master patient index, a organization could be using an automated MPI, or they can be using a manual MPI. With an automated MPI, we're basically saying that that master patient index is residing on a computer, and that information is in a database. All right. Here's a pictorial example of a automated MPI, which is the same as your figure 8.1 in your textbook. All right. So basically, you have all this information in there, and you can put in that patient's name, and it will generate what that patient's medical record number is, and now we can pull that information out of that actual medical record and have access to that patient's information. You have what we call an ADT system, which stands for Admission Discharge Transfer Systems, that you will see organizations use, and basically this is where they use the system to register patients. So they use that data entry process to put that information in, and this is what we can use in order to create a master patient index, the information that is captured in that ADT system. All right. When you have a automated MPI, it provides you with, that organization, with the capability of generating reports, because it can manipulate that information in different types of ways so that we can get reports that we need maybe to make decisions within our organization, as well as to report certain information to different agencies that's required. Your book brings out those different types of statistical needs and those reports that satisfy those needs and it talked about daily census. We can help calculate that using our master patient index, different reports within the facility from department to department, for our accounts receivable information, admission, our occupancy rates within our organization. All the MPI can help facilitate the collection of this information. So a very big advantage to automated MPI is that report generation. Now, you can also have manual MPIs, and you'll probably see this more often in a smaller type organization or facility. With a manual master patient index, we're doing everything by hand. It's not electronically generated, so and it's usually based on some index cards in which they enter or type all that information on an index card, one index card per patient, and they put it in a filing system. You got figure 8.3 in your chapter 8 that shows a alphabetical file guide for your filing system. So it'll be in those little boxes, and you'll have all your little index cards housed in that vertical file. And basically, when you need to get information from your master patient index, you retrieve that from this little file, and you pull the card. If you have to update some information, you're going to pull that card and redo that information on that card. And you see these little tabs with the letters that help for the location of the different cards that you are needing to pull. So there are advantages and disadvantages to both. And here's a pictorial example of what the type of information that you will see on a manual master patient index card. This is associated with your figure 8.2 in your textbook, same picture. You can see that patient demographic information, their mission, and discharge date, and discharge status, and so forth, what type of patient they were on this card. Okay, so let's look at some of your advantages and disadvantages. One thing about a manual MPI is, as we have described the process and what's being used here, it's pretty inexpensive in terms of the things you need in order to create this system or use this system. Especially when compared to a automated MPI, just for the fact that you got to have computer systems in place and computer equipment and software applications in order to complete the process in an automated MPI. Now, but on the other hand, with your automated MPI, you can quickly find the information that's needed in that master patient index when you compare it to a manual MPI, because you got to manually go through and look up that system in that little index file, which is going to be much slower than I'm just typing in that patient name in there. All the information I need comes up on the automated system. However, when there's a power outage, then there's an advantage to having a manual, maybe on backup or something, because now I can still pull that information because that manual system is not dependent upon your electricity or the power. Okay? But on the other hand, with the manual MPI, you can't get but so much information on this little card. So it's sort of limiting when you compare it to an automated system in which we can put a significantly larger amount of information into an automated system. Other things you have to think about is when there are errors, say in a manual MPI, if an error is made in the patient's name or some other error that will impact us pulling or locating that file. Say we misfile it, it's going to be harder to find that information than in a automated MPI. So that will be a downfall there. Accessibility is greatly improved with the automated MPI because it's electronic. So I could be in my department and someone else could be in another department in the health organization, and they can be internal, or it could be an outside facility, and they can access a automated NPI. That's not true for a manual one. The box is either in one department or another department. Can't be in two at the same time. So access is greatly improved with the automated NPI. That kind of goes hand in hand with the automated system's ability to allow for exchange of data among multiple software products. That's talking about interfacing of systems. And when that happens, then there's communication that can occur. And this is not possible at all with a manual NPI. All right? So that's just a quick rundown of some of your advantages and disadvantages of using automated versus a manual NPI system. Now, if an organization is interested in converting from a manual NPI to an automated NPI, what your textbook brings out is that they want to make sure that they maintain that manual NPI system at least 6 months after conversion, because you want to ensure that you have captured accurate information from your manual system before you destroy that system. But more common or more often, you do not see organizations maintaining both systems simultaneously. They're going to either maintain one or the other. All right? The book also tells you about typical information that is included in an NPI, talking about the patient demographic information, name, address, social security, date of birth. You also have admission and discharge date for their time, the medical record number, the facilities information, what type of patients they are, indicating the type of care that they have received. All right, but they can also capture diagnosis and procedure information. They can capture ethnicity information, maiden name type information. Really, it can contain any information that an organization sees fit for them to capture. Okay, but there's some basic information like we initially discussed, but they can have above and beyond that being stored in a master patient index. It is very advantageous for an organization when they have an NPI, especially when you have patients who are seeing multiple providers, and this information needs to be maintained. An NPI can facilitate the synchronization of that information, which will allow these providers to communicate with one another and provide quality care to that patient. So basically, in terms of a master patient index and its purpose, is there for continuity of care, and that's what we kind of were alluding to just a second ago, when these different providers can communicate with one another, and as a patient goes from one type of one provider to another provider, and they can access this information that contributes to the continuity of care. So the NPI essentially is a customer database. All right. Also, reports. We talked about the generation of reports. That capability, especially with an automated NPI. So therefore, organizations can use this for planning purposes and marketing purposes with their master patient index. Also, it indicates to providers if that patient has been previously seen within their organization, and if that's the case, then they can pull that information, and this is going to contribute to the care that that patient is presently receiving. All right. On an external note, again, they can link to other providers and link them to other services that they may need outside of that particular facility. And because they can do that, then we can avoid duplication of services from different individuals in that care continuum. It also can assist with individuals who want to exploit the system and pretty much commit fraud and abuse, it can help with the detection of that as well. So one thing we want to look at that can be a concern or issue is the duplication of records that can occur in a master patient index. Because mistakes can happen, you can have integrity issues in your master patient index. And one of those common ones, or one of those very significant ones, would be the duplication of records. And it can happen in many different ways. It could just be plain errors that are being made, or maybe when they're accessing, when that patient is coming in, they don't locate, maybe it has been stored incorrectly, and when they go into access the record, they don't see that one, and so another person is given that same number, anything like that. Or if different organizations merge, their merger occurs, and so their NPIs merge, and then you can have duplication happen that way. Usually what you're going to find in an organization is that their admissions department is the one that generates that number for the medical record. And it also updates that NPI record in cooperation with your health information management department. Most of the time we'll do that, and the HIM is usually more so responsible for the integrity of their master patient index, whereas the admission department is more so responsible for the signing of those numbers and things like that. You may have where organizations use consultants to help them to analyze and evaluate their master patient index for these types of duplication errors and other issues and integrity concerns, to help them out a little bit with that. And basically what will occur is they're going to analyze and evaluate their system to identify those issues. They're going to look at the different policies and procedures that an organization has in place, and do what we call a risk assessment in terms of what that means to their organization when they have these duplication issues. And then they're going to summarize all that, pointing out, identifying those integrity issues and describing what type of issues that's occurring, and then provide some type of recommendations for the organization to improve. All right. So with these issues, we need to have, our organization needs to have policies and procedures in place to deal with this type of thing. So basically, they need to have a merger plan in place in case that happens to be the issue. They need to do auditing other NPI, and just have different mechanisms, maybe even calling in, like we say, a consultant or something to assist with integrity issues with the NPI. Now, the master patient index is the main index that we're going to often talk about and that's often used. But there also can be other indexes that are being used by a healthcare facility. You have what we call disease indexes, procedure indexes, and physician indexes. Now, more often than not, presently, a lot of times you won't see an organization really using these type of indexes anymore, because we have these report applications that help provide us with the information we need, so we no longer really need to store these type of indexes. But some facilities may still use these. And basically, we already talked about indexes helping to guide or point out a certain thing of interest for us. So with these, it still holds true. When you have a disease index, the index is set up based on your disease codes, and that will be your ICD code, whether it be ICD-9, ICD-10, we call those diagnosis codes. So your index will be organized according to those diagnosis codes, right? And so basically, maybe an organization may be interested in how many patients came in with a certain type of condition or diagnosis. Then your disease index will be what you can use to locate that, because I might want to put in maybe hypertension of some sort. I think it's a 40, and I can't even remember what that code is, but you can pull in up that hypertension code, and then all your patients who came in with that condition, you can pull it up. So that's how that will work. So that's a disease index. A procedure index is based on organized according to procedures, right? So it will be based on your procedure codes, all right? Your physician index will be organized according to physicians, or maybe their physician ID or something of that nature. Maybe I want to see, what type of patients physician X is treating, and so I can pull up in my physician index by that physician ID number, the physician name, however you do that, and pull up that physician's patient. All right. Common information you'll find in an index of this nature: demographic information. You can find financial information, medical information, as your book brings out. We use indexes for all those, like the purposes I laid out to you there, those examples I gave you. Also, when you have accreditation, things that you need to turn in, or things you need to complete prior to the accreditation survey, your indexes are handy. Also, when you're doing quality review processes, your indexes are also handy. Your book gave you some Victoria examples. Here's an example of a disease index, and you can see here, this one is for AIDS, your 042 code. So you see that it's organized according to the diagnosis code. Here's a procedure index, and these are basically, here's all your procedure codes, and so that is your organization tool for that index, and these are associated with your figure 8.7. This is figure 8.8 in your textbook if you want to look at it a little closer. And then here is your figure 8.9, which is your physician index. And you see this one is doing about physician ID, right? So you see the patients that physician saw, right? And that's your other types of indexes. And there could be, really, an organization can create all types of indexes based on their needs. All right, moving forward from indexes, we're going to look at registers and registries. Okay, so a register basically, and they contain, your registers and registries, they have information about a particular disease or condition or event. And you have your healthcare facilities or agencies on the federal and state level, private organizations, all can maintain registers and registries. All right. And what typically happens is you have what we call a case report form that you submit, that the facilities will submit to the different agencies or facilities or organizations that maintain those registries. We'll put that information on that case report form. All right. With a register, and your book does a good job of differentiating between the two. Your register is a collection of information, whereas your registry is a structured system for collecting and maintaining information about a population for analysis and review. All right? All right. And so it tells you you will use your register to verify information, and you're going to use the registry to collect data and perform your analysis and study. All right? So a register to verify information and a registry to collect and perform analysis and study of that data. That's your two differences in purposes and what they are. All right? Now, in terms of a register, there are different types of registers that you can see in a healthcare organization or a hospital. You have admission registers, discharge registers, death registers. And so basically, your admission register will be by admission date, right? And then have patient information associated with each of those dates. Discharge, and your admission register is usually maintained by your admissions office, and your discharge registered by your HIM department, and so it's by discharge date, right, with other associated information. Your HIM department will handle that. Then you got your death registers. Your HIM department also maintains those, and it's going to be according to the date of the patient's death. And a lot of times this information that's being collected in this register may have to be used for reporting to different agencies for different types of, say, disease studies, statistical report, public health usage, and those types of things. Your book brings out all the different types of things that you can accommodate using your registers. You have in your registers and registries. For instance, it says for determining incidence of disease, looking at disease trends, trying to identify high-risk groups in a patient population, types of patients that a provider is seeing, for research, looking for potential donors, maybe for certain conditions, maybe for transplants, or transplants and organ donors and things like that. Also, potential participants in clinical trials. These are some of the uses for your registers and your registries. These are considered secondary sources of information. Your healthcare record being your primary source, because we've discussed that before. And again, your different agencies that require that this information be reported, these are all secondary uses. You got different communicable diseases that healthcare organizations are required to report that flows into this as well. So with your registries, they focus on particular diseases, and they collect different information from different sources in reference to these diseases. They look for cases of this, and they're trying to identify referrals, conducting follow-up investigations, and incurring high costs, right? Because they're looking for people who fall into those different disease parameters that they may be looking for, i.e. cancer or AIDS or whatever you have, whatever they may be looking for. They're looking for those particular patients that's going to fit in those parameters, and then they're going to collect information on them, and they're going to look at different ways to help assist them with those conditions, and then do follow-up. And all of this can be expensive. So they're a little different than other sources of data. All right. Now, also included in this discussion will be your vital statistics, because they are also like registers and registries. And when we think about vital statistics, we're looking at birth, death, marriages, divorces. These all fall under vital statistics. More commonly when we think, especially in a hospital, you're going to first off think of birth certificates and death certificates. Well, your hospitals do collect this information. Your National Center for Health Statistics is your office on the national level, but you also have, that's a federal agency, but you also have vital statistics offices on state level. And then you have your hospitals and other organizations that report that information to the state, and that state forwards that information to the National Center for Health Statistics. The NCHS, that's what we call the National Center for Health Statistics, have standard certificates that they provide to the state, but the state has the right to modify that according to their needs in terms of death certificates and birth certificates. So your birth certificates are usually under the purview of your health information department, and then your death certificates are usually initiated by your nursing staff, and then your physician, and then your funeral homes are the ones who completed and submitted to your state offices. Your operation of your registers and registries can be sponsored by different facilities or organizations or entities. You got your federal government, your state, you got nonprofit organizations, you got individual groups and hospitals. You also have private groups, you got state government, universities. I mean, the sponsors to that can be endless. Your table 8.1 in your textbook in chapter 8 gives you a list. It's not an exhaustive list of different types of registers and registries, their sponsors, and a description of those. All right, so you can take a look at that at your convenience. All right, now the discussion moves to what we call case abstracting, and this occurs a lot in your HIM department, and that's basically you are pulling information from your records and for different types of uses. And it could be automated abstracting or manual abstracting. You're collecting, capturing different types of information for many different purposes. For reimbursement purposes, we could be abstracting information. We might be trying to do some type of statistics or some kind of reporting, things that we're trying to take care of. We might be looking at reviewing patient charges, just a whole host of different things. One thing it mentions here is case mix analysis. With case mix analysis, this is basically talking about when an organization is trying to identify or look at the different types of patients that they're serving in their facility, and there is actually a formula in which you can determine your what we call a case mix, and then that's when we're analyzing, it's a case mix analysis. Well, this abstraction process that we do helps us, can assist us or facilitate us determining our case mix analysis in an organization. All right, and so like I mentioned, you can have an automatic case abstracting system or a manual case abstracting system. When you have automated, your computer helps you to pull and do all these different tasks. When you have a manual case abstracting system, then the health information department has to enter the patient data onto what we call a case abstracting form. Your book actually shows you an automated case abstracting screen in figure 811, and then in figure 812 on page 252 you see a manual case abstracting form. So they are pulling similar information. One is just on paper and one is on a screen. In a manual system, so they're going to enter that information on a case abstracting form, and it can be submitted in batches to a vendor, and that vendor is going to perform data entry on that information on the case abstracting form, and then they can generate reports on that information. And this is in a manual type method or system. So in order for them to do this in a manual system, they have to have a standard method put in place for collecting and reporting that information. Has already been established. And basically what they're creating is what we call a data set of information that we're going to collect or abstract from our record or from that patient encounter. What information are we going to abstract? And this is what we call a data set, and we kind of had a discussion on this earlier in the course. And when you have this data set created, you're going to also have to have a need for a data dictionary. And a data dictionary is just what you know of as a dictionary. It defines things. So this data dictionary is going to define the element that you're capturing in your data set. You have a example of a data dictionary in table 8.2. Alright, so for example, in table 8.2 it says account number is a data element that they're going to capture And then that definition, a 9-digit number assigned upon patient admission. Patient receives a new account number upon each admission or visit to the facility. So there's the definition for the data element of account number. Okay? Now, you have several types of data sets that different organizations, healthcare organizations use, and it's sort of dependent on the patient type and the types of services that are being provided. And I think I may have mentioned this earlier in the course. So you have data beads. That's your data elements for emergency department systems. You have EMDS, Essential Medical Data Set. HIIM, Health Plan Employer Data and Information Set. MDS, Minimum Data Set. National Cancer Database, NCDB. Outcome and Assessment Information Set, OASIS. JCO, which is now Joint Commission, ORIX Initiative. UACDS, Uniform Ambulatory Care Data Set, that should ring a bell. Uniform Clinical Data Set, UCDS. And you got Uniform Hospital Discharge Data Set, UHDDS. In your book on page, let's see, Table 8.3 on page 253, it lists all these data sets that I just indicated. It tells you the healthcare setting that you're going to find that. So like in D, it tells you the emergency department. HEDIS, it tells you it's for managed care organizations, MCOS. And then you got purposes over there on your right-hand column. MDS, your minimum data set, that's for long-term care facilities. And so you can look through it, and it flips on page 254 and gives you the rest of them. So you should look over that. So it gives you the data set, the setting that uses that data set, and the purpose for that data set. So you need to review that. It's very important that you do so. All right, so those are your main ones, but you also have other data sets that are associated with healthcare, and you have your Medical Information Bureau, MIB, and then you got your National Practitioner Data Bank, NPDB. With your MIB is basically a clearinghouse for medical and application of information about people who apply for insurance. And so basically what it does is help to identify those people who have a condition that put them in a certain risk classification, and they collect that information, not necessarily pulling the whole patient record, but they collect that information to serve as an alert to the underwriter for the insurance, for them to look at that person's case a little bit more closely. And what they're trying to do is to protect the insurers, the policyholders, and applicants from insurance fraud. Your National Practitioner Data Bank is for physicians. It's legislated by your Healthcare Quality and Improvement Act of 1986, and basically it's put in place to capture medical malpractice events on physicians. And so basically that database is going to contain information about practitioners who have malpractice incidents or have unprofessional behaviors, and it is used to restrict their ability from changing to different states. Maybe they get a malpractice situation or some unprofessional behavior in one state, they can't just go to another state and set up practice again, and nobody knows the better. So with this database, it kind of stopped that from happening, because it did used to occur before this, before the advent of this database. And also when that physician is trying to apply for privileges at a healthcare organization, then that person who is in charge of credentialing that physician can check the National Practitioner Data Bank to see if that physician who's applying for I just lost my thought, who is applying for permission to work in their facility, they can check to see if they have any adverse events against them in that National Practitioner Data Bank. I'm trying to say healthcare privileges. All right, so those are also considered to be data sets. All right, let's talk a little bit about healthcare data collection. All your organizations, we just talked about data sets, which is nothing other than data collection, but the healthcare facilities can use this for planning purposes, reporting purposes, and basically this is going to include when they're doing healthcare statistics, when they have data quality efforts, and hospital-based statistics. When we talk about descriptive statistics, this is a type of statistics that describe a particular population, all right, or whatever the population of interest, it describes it in some type of way. In terms of descriptive health statistics in a hospital, we're describing the population of patients that are being seen in that hospital. And with this type of statistics, you're going to typically see them describe it in a visual way, using charts, graphs, and tables. And your book does briefly show you a couple of those, and I'm going to mention a couple of them in just a second. All right. Healthcare data is classified into the following categories. You can have aggregate data, and that's basically data that really doesn't include identifiable patient information, but it is a combination of different information from different records that is going to provide some meaning, but it's not identifying any particular patient. That's aggregate data. That type of data is based on performance, utilization, and resource management. You got comparative data where you're comparing one against the other. It's used for outcomes measurement and research. You got patient-centric data that's directly related to patients. And then you have transform-based data for clinical and management decision support and planning. All right? So your HIM department usually has the responsibility for calculating those statistical measures and making sure those are accurate. A lot of that will be done in an automated system if that's what they're based on, and they have different times when they continually do these types of calculations. A lot of times you're going to see it on a monthly basis, and then you have to see annual reports, and you see different types of things that they're interested in calculating, like Table 8.4. These are true hospital account type statistics. We do statistical measures on discharges, length of stays of patients, census reports. That's like how many people are there. Maybe at census taking time, or at a particular hour, how many beds are filled, occupancy rate, birth, death rate, birth rates. We calculate all types of things. And your book gives you a couple of examples showing you the formulas and stuff that are used for this type of statistical collection of data. And we will go into these in more detail in our actual healthcare statistics class. And as I mentioned before, a lot of this information is calculated, and then they find visual ways to present this information using like your bar graphs, your pie graphs, and your line charts. Figure 8.13 shows a couple of examples of those. You got your bar chart there, where they displaying data on the X, Y axis, and then you see your pie chart is made like a circle, like cut out to a pie that shows your data as it relates to the whole. And then you have your line diagram, or what we call a run chart, that looks at data over a period of time. We'll use these typical types of graphs and charts and stuff in your statistics class. Now, also important with data collection is that of data quality processes. You can collect these statistics and everything, but they will not be useful if they are inaccurate. We need to have quality data that we're basing our decisions and our reports and everything on, and so we have to do quality improvement processes. there are general data quality characteristics that are important. Your book there lays out a couple here. Data integrity, right? We need to have accurate, consistent, complete, up-to-date information, up-to-date data. The data needs to be reliable or consistent and valid, meaning it needs to conform to an expected range of values. So we have to monitor our data to make sure that it adheres to these quality characteristics. HIIM actually has what we call a data quality management model that they use to help outline these characteristics for data quality. And they actually have 4 areas that they point out in this data quality management model. That of data application, meaning what the purpose of, looking at the purpose of that data. Collection, meaning the processes in which we accumulate that data. Data warehousing, look at the processes for storing that data. And then data analysis, how we're translating that data into information for our applications. So all this is when we pull in our enforce what we call a continuous quality improvement, CQI, and all organizations that you look at, even when they're not healthcare, usually have some kind of total quality management or continuous quality improvement. They have this concept in their operations. We also, in the healthcare environment, do as well. We are interested in quality of our data, quality of our care. When we're looking at CQI, we're basically focusing on processes rather than specific individuals. It's been found that a lot of times when there are errors in what's going on in that treatment or in that care is most often found in the process and not necessarily that of what an individual is actually doing. We also take into consideration both our internal customers and our external customers, and we want objective data to help us in our analyzation, in our improvement process. So, the characteristics of ensuring data quality include these following, and this is very important, so you need to take a look at these. This is found on page 258 at the bottom in the first column. Data accessibility, data accuracy, data comprehensiveness, data consistency, data definition, looking at meanings of the data. It's sort of similar. We just talked about that in a similar vein. Data granularity, right? Details. We're looking at the details of our data. Data precision, expected data value, data relevancy, data timeliness, all right? All of these are important data quality characteristics that we need to refer to when we are evaluating and assessing the data that we're using in a healthcare organization. Data mining is an important concept. People, they use data mining to look at patterns and trends and to help identify relationships between that data. And basically, when an organization is able to do this, then they're able to actually compare data across many different components in their organization. They can acquire, store, analyze, and compare across their organization. A lot of times you'll see organizations use what we call a relational database, but that is pretty two-dimensional. And now you see an upgrade to that thought or that concept with the use of online analytical processing, OLAP, servers that can store data using multiple dimensions. And once you do multiple versus just two-dimensional, you've already increased your ability to look at those trends and do forecasting and those types of things that help the organization to be a lot more proactive in the way they do business. So we talked about your statistics and your hospital-based statistics. If you look over there on page 259, it has a lot of different examples of hospital-specific based statistics that I've already pretty much talked about a couple of those, like your discharges, your census data, your length of stay data, and those types of things. All right, so you can take a look at that. All right, so this is going to conclude my discussion of Chapter 8, Indexes, Registers, and health data collection.